Welcome goats! This is our updated Ayato guide for his rerun, this patch 3.3, and we already have one before for his first run. It was actually my first character guide, but that was before the release of 3.0, the Sumeru region and Dendro element, so we'll be touching up those as well. If you're new here or you just happen to pass by, thank you for dropping by. This is Godric and I hope that you find this guide useful. With that, let's get right into it. Let's talk about Kamisato Ayato.
The depth back.
So Ayato is the commissioner of the Yashiro Commission, one of the three commissions or body that governs Inazuma. And as you know, he is also the brother of Ayaka, so he's a Hydro Sword character and his kit mainly focuses on enhanced normal attacks. So that includes a hybrid of AoE and normal attack buff from his burst. Basically, he's an on-field DPS, but he's not as greedy for field time as the likes of Ito or Zhao. Now let's take a look at his talents. Of course, first is the normal attack, gives you up to 5 strikes, could also be charged or plunging, basic stuff, and then his elemental skill, Kamisato Art Kyoka. Like I said, this is where we focus as this is his main source of damage. So once you activate it, in Razor words, you will attack very fast. So, more detailed explanation, once you use his skill, Ayato will change his stance where he will enter the Takemiguri Kanka state, and it is in this state that Ayato is able to attack very fast. Now, some notes, the slashes are AoE hydro damage. It can't be overridden, so our C6 Bennett is very much welcome here, and he can only do normal attacks in this state, no charged or plunge attacks. That being said, basically when you use his skill, even if you hold, he won't do charge attacks and will continuously do normal attacks instead. Of course, since these are normal attacks, stamina consumption won't be an issue. And through testing without any external buff, I make 14 to 15 slashes, in addition to him doing the sort of blinking attack. So that is similar to Raiden Shogun on her burst form. Okay, now, you gain the so-called Namisen stacks, which are also based off of his HP. But I have to say that you don't have to make him dependent on HP or build him as an HP dependent build because the bonus from here is only minimal. Simply put, each slash will become stronger up to the cap of 4, so buffing his attack speed is also beneficial as of course, you'll be able to make more slashes in the short 6-second duration of this state. And we can also observe that the illusion he creates when Ayato uses his skill will explode even if the Takemiguri Kanka state isn't over yet, and if monsters approach it, it will explode. Now on his burst,
Kamisato Art. Suiyu.
this unleashes this wide radius of raining hydro damage. In addition to that, it buffs normal attacks of party members, including Ayato himself. This is why, especially in the Abyss, it's preferable to use your burst first before you rotate to your team and then back to Ayato for his skill and normal attack spamming. The burst has a long duration, so you'll always find yourself rotating back to Ayato with the burst still active. So just chill there because we're not done yet with his kit. So next are his passive talents. So these actually have more play about his whole kit. But first is the daily cooking. This doesn't really contribute a lot, but this gives you a chance of making a sus dish, so very in-character detail, although honestly not very useful. And then Michiyuku Hagetsu, so when he's not on field and he has less than 40 energy, Ayato will regenerate 2 energy every second. This ties perfectly with his burst, of course. After activating it, you'd have 0 energy, right? And that is where this comes into picture. Also, one reason why Ayato doesn't have as big of a problem like other characters is, this kind of passive is locked from Constellation. And finally, the Minuo Matoishi Kiyotake. This is tied to his skill, the Kyoka, and he immediately gains 2 Namisen stacks, and when his illusion explodes, he will get the Namisen effect per max stack possible. So, the wording max stack possible is because when you get his second Constellation, the 4 stacks will become 5. So what I'll say here is, with his skill, is that overall, you just have to do normal attacks in this state, as much as you can and as much as possible to utilize the effects. One tip I have to say though is that, like Sino, he has in his description increased resistance to interruption, right? But that's not really the case, let's be honest there. Sometimes you will be knocked back, and when you're in his skill form, it's better to dodge by dashing instead of letting yourself get hit. That will be a bigger DPS overall. Now, his talents pretty much tell us that Ayato is a good on-field or for quick swapping with his burst. So you can bring with you another on-field DPS such as Raiden or Yoimiya, them having an almost similar kit. So with Raiden, you can make use of Ayato's burst while she's in her burst form, and in contrast with Yoimiya on her skill normal attacking stance, both of them can work well while Ayato is off or on-field. You're probably, seeing where I'm going here with this. So Raiden's skill is good on field, can be procced by Ayato, the same way with Yoimiya's burst buff. But that being said, we have to be honest about Ayato's burst. It does provide a normal attack buff, so that's good right there. But if you're after the Hydro application, this is not the best in-game because of the random raining effect. Ayato can be built easily, honestly. You can stack any offensive weapons, preferably with crit substats. Passives may also be utilized, but of course, you have to play around them and their niche. With that, we can start with the Harbinger of Dawn. It's the most viable 3-star weapon overall, and you just have to stay aware of your shield or back your team up with a fast healing unit so you can make sure that you can sustain your HP to above 90% mark. But you can only get so much from this being a 3-star weapon, so make sure that you bring an attack buffer with you. Use this or the Cool Steel if you're still at an early level, or AR if you really have no other choice. For 4-star weapons, the free weapons, we have first the Amenoma Kageuchi, Inazuma craftable weapon. You can make use of the attack substat here and the passive that allows you to regain your burst faster. Next is the Kagotsurube Ishin. This one is from Kazuha's story quest, although it's only R1, it can't be refined. So the passive is nice because it procs the damage passive and increases your attack further. Lion's Roar is also viable, but only if you use Ayato as a driver in an on-field Electro Charge team. You get an increase in damage against mobs affected by Pyro or Electro. I did mention that it's good with Electro only because, as you know, Pyro and Hydro procs vaporize and the applications will disappear when they are procced, so you won't get the damage bonus. Now, if you have the Flute, it can be viable as well. And then we have the Blackcliff weapon, although I don't like personally the passive as well that much, because you still need to kill mobs first for it to proc, but it can be fairly useful as a crit stat stick. If you happen to have it, you can use it for Ayato. And also, if you have the Battle Pass weapon, the Black Sword is a good option. Same thing with Blackcliff, can be used as a crit stat stick. Now, naturally, like I always say, 5-star weapons give us better scaling and passives. So, first we have the Skyward Blade from the standard banner, a hybrid buffing passive, and although you have ER substat here, which doesn't really appeal to me for Ayato, use it if you have no other option. We can also consider the Summit Shaper. It has this crazy attack substat and passive buff where you need to have consistent shielding for you to get. Keep in mind about that if you want to use it. And finally, honestly, any of these 3 weapons are excellent on Ayato: the Primordial Jade Cutter, the Mist Splitter Reforged, and of course his signature weapon, the Haran Gepaku Futsu. But I have to be honest here, if you have either the Jade Cutter or the Mist Splitter already, just use those. Especially if you're an F2P or a low spender or conservative spender, however you want to call yourself. The Haran is great, don't get me wrong, but it's just less universal compared to the first 2 I mentioned. But also, for his upcoming banner only, the weapon banner is a sort of win-win banner because you'll also get a chance at the Engulfing Lightning, which is a great weapon for burst DPS units. But overall, again, it's up to you. And like I said, if you want to save but still get the same, if not close to Ayato's max potential, you can keep the Jade Cutter or the Mist Splitter. The Mist Splitter has better drip on him, by the way, if you dig that. So yeah. Next, we have a bonus section. So stay away from these weapons, or rather, don't use these weapons on Ayato. The Sacrificial, Favonius, and the Festering Desire. They're just better off on other characters, as well as the Aquila Favonia, so that's going to be useless on him because of the physical damage substat. Okay, now on artifacts. Ayato can be treated as a generic DPS, so endgame and dress and efficiency wise, prioritize stats over set bonuses, or at least while you're still on the hunt for better on-piece. But for clarity and specific roles you want him to fill, we have the 4-piece Heart of Death set. This set is best for a main on-field DPS capitalizing on his skill. We also have the 4-piece Gladiator's Finale, a good generalist set for 18% and 35% attack bonus. And then of course, 4-piece Echoes of an Offering. This is a set that I didn't bother getting because it has this RNG dependency, not to mention that it also varies based on your ping, so not a very good idea for me, or at least not consistent, unless you're able to passively get good rolls on 2-piece sets from either Echoes itself or the Vermilion set. Only then can we say that the farming that we did here in this domain is efficient. Now, we mentioned that his burst damage and hydro application isn't as reliable, so I would advise against using Noblesse set on him. Honestly, that's it. That's simply it. If you have yet to reach AR45 or unlock 5-star artifact domains, just use attack sets or even none at all. Just follow the stat priority that we have here, which goes for everyone, by the way, even with the 5-star artifact sets. So attack percent on Sands, hydro damage goblet, and either crit rate or crit damage on circlet depending on your weapon and your substats. So speaking of substats, of course, prioritize crits and attack. Do not go for HP as the bonus as it's very minimal. So like I said, you'll get more from attack stats directly. Constellations. Like most 5-star characters, Ayato's Constellations are a luxury and only get them if you like his character that much. So generally, this goes for all characters, or at least that's how we should treat them, right? But if you're after the meta, I have to be honest, they're not really meta defining or anything. But all that being said, you can see I have his C2 here because I do like his character and I personally liked using him, so I kept on pulling during his first banner. Somehow I did get lucky and got early pulls. So anyway, I have my pulling session video here on the channel if you want to check it out. So let's check out each of the constellations now. C1 is not something I'd recommend going for specifically since it's not that huge of a damage boost. Just think of it as a downgraded Wolf Gravestone effect, you know, more damage for mobs that are almost about to die. So that's just it. And then C2 is another skill boost for his Namisen stacking. So your max stacks will be increased to 5, like I said earlier in his passive talent. In addition, when he has 3 stacks, he gains additional 50% max HP. So like I said, the HP scaling for his skill isn't really that high, but overall around 10 to 15% of damage increase from C0. So up to you if you think that that's worth your pulse, if you want to go for that. And of course, standard for C3 and C5 increased to skill and burst by 3 levels. So C4 overall is a team buff. After using your burst, all party members gain 15% normal attack speed for 15 seconds. So it's perfect for, utilizing his burst for your normal attackers, Yoimiya, for example, and even Ayato himself. And finally, C6 is enhancing his own DPS potential, where he deals 2 additional strikes from his first strike on his skill. So the scaling is high for 50% of his attack and it's independent of the Namisen stacking. Now, as with all other 5-star characters, we see how his final constellation sort of gives him his OP output, but overall, like I said, C0 is fine, it's great, and you don't need the cons if you're after the meta, so only pull for them if you really like the character. Now, this is probably the most important section of this video because since his first release, I did mention this earlier, the Dendro element and their reactions were not active yet. That being said, let's first go over his regular teams and those that you may want to try out for yourself. So this is the team that I personally use on a hyper carry Ayato, so him with Bennett, Yunjin, and Kazuha. It's obvious how this works. Bennett provides attack buff and healing, he has 4-piece Noblesse by the way, Yunjin, normal attack buff, and if you have C6 for attack speed. So I have her here with 2-piece Defender's Will and 2-piece Husk, and of course Kazuha for resistance shredding and elemental damage bonus, and he has 4-piece Viridescent. Now you may ask, Mr. Godric sir, does Yunjin have to be C6 so we could use her? Can we use her at C0? Of course you still can. And her burst normal attack buff scales off of her defense, and that is something that you can adjust. So her C6 is just a nice upgrade since you're not only buffing the damage but also the attack speed. Now, you can use this team or swap Yunjin with Candace, but since Candace is a fairly new character, I'm betting that most of you guys either don't have her or her cons, but although I only have her C2, I replaced Yunjin with her, sacrificing my attack speed since, my Yunjin is C6. You may also ask if you can use them both. You of course can, but the buffs can only deal so much damage, so you're better off using just either one of them and use a 4-piece Viridescent holder. And then we have the national team with Bennett, Xiangling, and Xingqiu. This works very well with Ayato as you just get all of these vaporized reactions everywhere. We can also make use of, albeit needing a lot of practice, the Kamisato household team with Ayato, Ayaka, Toma, and Sayu. Sayu of course works like Jean, and she provides healing and Viridescent resistance shredding. Now, the use of either Ayaka or Ayato will depend on you, the player. If you want to prioritize either one of them as your resident on-field attacker, they can complement each other for when one bursts, you can swap to the other, and so on. You can, by the way, replace Ayaka with Ganyu here, and Sayu, of course, with Jean. And speaking of Jean, if you happen to have her at C2 and you're into doing some showcases, Jean C2 increases your party's attack speed. So I have her here with Chongyan, and Chongyan's second passive also grants attack speed. So in our last slot is of course Yunjin C6, so with this bunch, our Ayato will gain massive attack speed. Next, these teams will have their own niche, but it will be very rewarding. The niche being that if you have certain weapons or artifact sets that you want to use for Ayato. First is the freeze team, or rather, if you want to take advantage of the cryo buff properties such as equipping Ayato with 4-piece Blizzard Sprayer, which I did here, as well as the cryo team resonance. Of course, you need 2 cryo units, so that can be Ayaka, Ganyu, Kaya, or Zarya, Diona or Layla, and insert an Anemo unit for resistance shredding. I personally don't use a lot of freeze teams. I am more used to doing mono cryo teams with Ayaka, and I have to say that it really feels different, at least for me. But like I said, once you get used to it, your niche of having to freeze units first, it will be rewarding. But using your Ayato freeze team needs to be planned out, of course, since there are mobs that can't be put in frozen state. Next is the Electro Charge team. Like I said in the weapon section, this is a nice niche for when you have no weapon for Ayato, but you have the Lion's Roar. Just pair him with off-field Electro units and you're good to go. With Ayato being the main driver, of course, you can see here, I'm using Ayato with Fischl, Kuki, and Kazuha. And you know what each of them can do, so I'll leave it at that. And then let's get to the fun part. I put the Electro Charge team here last, so you can actually just modify this, insert Dendro units in place, and you have yourself a Dendro team. The teams I tried out are with Nahida, and we have Kuki and Albedo here. Kuki is an EM build, Albedo does what he does best, a great off-field DPS, but even more than that, his burst provides extra elemental mastery, which we definitely need in Dendro teams. So Nahida procs her Dendro damage, Ayato on field or off field via his burst, and he can apply Hydro and Bloom, and will leave our Hyper Bloom reactions with Kuki's off field skill. Alternatively, with a new artifact set which focuses on these reactions, you can replace Kuki with Toma or even Xiangling and use the Flower of Paradise Lost. So I replaced Kuki here and put Toma for the shield utility, so you may want to try something like this yourself. You can experiment. Use who you have, since each of our accounts have different units, of course, different artifact roles, different weapons, and at the end of the day, the tips I said here will be up to you if you want to follow them. Next, you can get some rotation techniques and positioning tips here in this showcase that I'm about to show you guys. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, stay safe, and I appreciate all of you for, we reached 650 subs now as of this recording. So thank you so much, and I hope that you like, you subscribe, and keep watching the videos that I release. I really put as much effort as I can into them. So yeah, enjoy the showcase, and again, thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.
Fire it up! Here's back! Cascade! back. Don't get too close.
This way, Turtle. No, my sword. Let me weave you a verse. Commit it to memory.
The depths back.
The Temple of Wisdom. Teamwork is dreamwork. Don't blink. With sword comes shadow. Incoming. This way, Turtle. Don't blink. Let's light it up. Grow, grow, grow. Share my knowledge. Huh? Incoming. Everybody stand up. Cut to the chase.
Be still. I made Kamisato on. Suiyu.
Everyone hold hands. Let's light it up. Speed of light.